Now, you mentioned sustainability. Obviously, there are a whole host of relatively new topics that are coming in front of boards, like the boards you sit on, whether it's all of the ESG topics, climate change, sustainability, human capital management, or even corporate political donations, which was hot here in the States in recent months. Do you think any of that affects the relationship between the board and the CEO, or are you all working together on topics like that?
Well, I think you're all, I mean, particularly at the board, you're trying to make sure that you're on top of what expectation, what the stock exchange expectations are for you as a minimum, and then more broadly what investors and other stakeholders are expecting of you. And then I think it gets built into your roles on strategy setting, where, how is ESG built into that? To the oversight responsibilities. I mean, we've always, boards always are going to have regular reports on, let's say, take health and safety, for example, of just, what's the injury track record of a, you get, what's our carbon track record? What's our, diversity track record at different levels in the company? And it absolutely comes to the board in terms of, how are we doing factually, numerically, and then it leads to the conversation of what do we want to be doing, and how do we commit to that? I would say the rest of the world doesn't always make it that easy for us, because just the multiplicity of different ways that people measure all of these things today, particularly on ESG. I mean, it's perfectly. I mean, we've had some discussions in at least one of my boards on why is it that one agency rates us 5-star and another agency rates us 2-star when we're telling both of them the same things. And there's probably a perfectly good answer in terms of the metrics, but it doesn't help us communicate either internally or externally on how are we doing.
So do you find the board gets reasonably involved in figuring out how to measure the corporations where they sit and what benchmarks should be considered and so on? It's become an incredibly complex world, hasn't it? And there's so many standard setters out there right now. And it's debatable as to which are leading or which ones should be followed more than others. Yeah. Yeah. And do you find that the boards are involved as well as management?
I mean, boards definitely involved when, it comes to, what are investors using and how are investors asking us the questions. And certainly, I mean, you're going to find a board today is quite likely to have someone with deep ESG background, certainly the E part background on the board, and we're going to turn to them and, expect, input and guidance from them. Does it get to be contentious? I mean, it can be contentious around pace of travel, of like how quickly do we, want to, because the potentially very material costs in the short term, depending on how quickly one goes. But the debate around, which metrics to follow, and I mean, there's a bit of a learning process, Harry, to be honest. I mean, I think it's fair to say, we're trying to pin down what are the most relevant metrics for us, and how do we track them, and then work out how to track them. I mean, one of my boards, we have, 3 million drivers who are delivering food to people's homes every day, 40+ million meals a day. Are we, how much of that packaging is recycled? How many of those bikes are electric? They're not really the same metrics that you're going to use for a company that owns, major office developments and retail developments.